Hi, welcome back to Work Past the Record, the podcast where we get real, practical tools to help you move forward into meaningful employment, no matter your past. I'm your host, Lori, and welcome back. Today's segment is one of the most important skills you can learn: how to explain your criminal record in an interview and actually turn it into a strength. So today is owning your story, how to explain your record and show growth. I find it very important, and I hope you do too. And I hope it helps you in future endeavors as you enter into interviews for jobs. Because here's the truth: most people don't lose opportunities because of their record. They lose them because they don't know how to talk about it. So let's fix it. We're going to break this down into two parts: how to give plain context. That's the first one. And the second one is how to demonstrate growth. So let's start with the context. When an employer hears you have a record, their mind starts filling in all the blanks. So they take control of your narrative. Your job is to control the narrative quickly, clearly, and calmly. Plain context means what happened. By that, I mean general, not detailed. For example, I was caught with a firearm and I have past felonies, so I got in trouble for that. Maybe the felonies were felony shoplifting, maybe it was theft, maybe it was domestic violence. You don't need to go into great detail about it. When it happened 5 years ago, it happened 10 years ago, it happened 2 years ago. You want to be straight and to the point, and you want to let them know that it's resolved. You did time for it, you went to court and paid fines, you went into some type of a reentry program instead of doing jail time. That's what you want to let them know. You want them to know that this is done. It's not hanging over your head. That's it. Not your life story. Here's what that sounds like. I'm going to give you an example. About 5 years ago, I had a nonviolent conviction related to assault. Simple, clean, no extra details, no emotions, no long explanations. They don't need to have that. It's none of their business beyond what you're telling them. Because the longer you stay in the past, the harder it is to move the conversation forward, because they'll continue to ask questions about those past events. And you don't want your interview to focus on that. You want your interview to focus on who you are right now and what you can offer to a company. So don't stay in the past. Do it quick and simple, just like the example I just gave you. The next part we're going to go over is taking ownership, accountability. Employers are listening for that. They're listening for that one thing. They want you to say you take ownership of what you did wrong. And this part is really critical. You don't blame, you don't make excuses, no wrong place, wrong time. Just this: I take full responsibility for that decision. That is short, it's direct, and powerful. Employers get upset when you start blaming everyone else. I was with my friends. They pressured me into doing this. I didn't really want to. My ex, he told me he'd leave me if I didn't do this. They don't want to hear that. Take accountability, take the responsibility for what happened. The next thing you want to do is demonstrate growth. Here's where everything changes. This is the part most people rush, but it's actually the most important part of the entire conversation that you have with a potential employer. You're answering one question: why are you a different person today than you were when you had that conviction, when you got in trouble with the law? And the key word here is proof. Not "I've changed." Anybody can say that, but here's what I've done to change. That could be: I completed a program like a reentry program or vocational rehab. I've been holding a steady job at McDonald's. I've gained certifications. Maybe you got a CPR certification. Maybe you got a welding certification. You want to emphasize those. Those are what make you a more desirable employee. I've been staying consistent and accountable. Here's what it sounds like when you put it all together. Since then, I've completed a reentry program, stayed consistently employed, and focused on building structure and accountability in my life. Now you're showing them the proof. You're not just telling them. Anybody can go in and say, "I've changed." And we all know, in some cases that's true, but in a lot of cases it's not. You want an employer to believe you when you say, "Here's how I've grown from who I was." The next thing you want to do is you want to turn it into a strength. You want to turn your past and everything that you've come to now and how you've shown growth into a strength. This is where you separate yourself from every other candidate that's applying for that same job. You don't just say you've improved, connect it to the workplace. What did that experience build in you? Maybe it was discipline. Maybe it was reliability or accountability or work ethic. That's what you want to let an employer know so that it sets you apart from anybody else applying for that same job that maybe doesn't have a past record. Here's an example. That experience taught me discipline and accountability, and I bring that into my work every day, showing up, staying consistent, following through. Now you're not just someone with a past, you're someone with proven growth. And that's what you want an employer to know. So, what did you get out of that experience of being incarcerated? What did you gain from that experience of being convicted if you were not incarcerated? What did it teach you, and how did you incorporate that into your life to make you a better person now? That's what you want to emphasize to someone. That's what's going to be the difference between you getting a job and just being another candidate. The next thing I want to tell you is never end your interview on your records, excuse me. Bring it back to what you can offer. It's so easy to get tied up in your record and relive it and be telling this future employer all of these things about your past and then trying to emphasize this is where I've grown, this is the skills I've gained, this is where I'm at now. This is what I've learned. I can hold myself accountable now. I'm reliable. I've become more reliable since this all happened. That's easy, but you don't want to focus just on your record. You want to bring it back to what you can offer. You want an employer to know what you can contribute to their team. So, I'm focused on continuing to grow. I'm confident I can contribute to your team. That's how you close it, with confidence and direction. So they may counter and say, how can you contribute to the team? Well, I have a strong work ethic. I have these certifications. I'm reliable. I'm accountable. Everything I just told you in the past, that's how I'm going to contribute to your team. I'm going to be a key player. I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to be the one that brings your goals closer because I'm determined to do so. You want to grow, so you want them to know that. The only way to show growth is to show reliability, to have accountability, and to prove to someone why you are a essential part of a team. Sorry, I'm tripping over my words today. You want confidence. You want direction. When I ask someone, why should I accept you into my program? It's always because I deserve it, or I need it, or I'm a hard worker, or I need the second chance, let's say. That's not what I want to hear. What I want to hear is, why should I accept you into this program? I want to hear because I've turned my life around. I know that I need to work to be able to grow. I want to be able to own my own house one day. I know I can be an integral part of your team or a strong part of your team because I have determination and I'm a hard worker. That's where I want to hear it. I don't want you just throwing words out at me. Well, no other employer does either. They want to know how you're going to contribute those things to their team. So let me give you a full version of how to say this to an employer, and you can hear how it kind of flows, and you can adapt this to yourself. I want to be transparent. About 5 years ago, I had a nonviolent conviction related to shoplifting. I take full responsibility for that. Since then, I've completed a reentry program, stayed consistently employed, and focused on structure and accountability. That experience really pushed me to grow. And today, I pride myself on being reliable and consistent. I'm excited about this opportunity because I know I can contribute and continue moving forward. So remember, you are not confessing your past, you're demonstrating your growth. And when you do it right, you shift the conversation from, can we trust you, to, we see your value. That's pretty much what is important, right? When we're trying to find a job, especially when we're trying to find a job and we have a past record. We want someone to trust us. You, as someone with a past who has a record, it's hard for you to trust anybody. You think everybody's out to get you because that's what you've lived with your whole life. Then, on top of having to prove to everyone in your life that you're worth taking a chance on and that they can now trust you because you're not who you were in the past. We never let our past define us. We show who we are today. You have to get an employer to trust you. Now, think about how hard that is. You're trying to get a job. You have a past. You've just told them that you had a past. You have to now convince them that you have learned and grown from that past and you're not going to go back to it. You want an employer to take a chance on you. So, in order for you to do that, you have to build trust with an employer. Again, you do not have to go into this great, huge detail of your past and, what was all involved with it or any of that because you don't want your past to define you. Sure, they need to know it, and it's important to tell them in the middle is what I'm going to say to you. So let's say that you're in this interview and, where do you tell them about your past? Do you tell them in the beginning? Do you tell them in the middle? Do you tell them in the end of your interview? So, what I say is this: if you tell them in the beginning of your interview, now you have started this narrative, and that's what they're going to be focused on. Is all they're going to be thinking about is you have a criminal background, you have a criminal past. They're going to take control of that narrative and they're not going to pay attention to everything else you are trying to tell them to show that you're a different person, that you are growing from where you were, why it's worth taking a chance on you because you've just told them that you have a past. If you tell them at the end of the interview, it can signal that you were trying to hide it, maybe from the future employer. And that's not good either. You don't want to hide anything. You don't want them to think, well, why didn't you tell me sooner than that? So that can show dishonesty. It can show, it can put a doubt in your integrity, I guess, is how I want to say that. So we don't want you to say it at the end. So the best place to tell an employer, a future employer, about your past is right in the middle. That is the sweet spot for it. Why? Well, it's important in the middle because you can work it into the conversation. You can pretty much control the narrative at that point, I should say. Sorry, at that point. If you say it in the middle, you have control of it because you're adding it in with how I told you to say it. By that point, you've made a connection with the future employer. So they have an idea of where you're coming from and they can get a good feel for you in that beginning part of the conversation with the questions and answers. When you tell them in the middle, you're telling them, I'm trying to be transparent or I am going to be transparent and let you know that 5 years ago, this happened. It was nonviolent. Since then, this is what I've done. Now you've put it in the middle. They already know you as a person from the beginning. You've just told them this part they need to know in the middle. So it's not going to control the narrative. You are, because at that point, you're telling them, you're selling yourself to them, right? And then at the end, when you close it, if they have any further questions about this conviction or this criminal past, they can ask you them, but you've been upfront and honest. I always tell everybody that comes in with a past, when you interview, don't start out with, hey, I have a criminal background. They don't need to hear that. They take that and they put the narrative to what they want to believe it is. Let's say in the beginning you go in and you say, hey, I want to be transparent. 5 years ago, I had a conviction for a nonviolent robbery. What's the first thing that employer is going to think? Oh, great. I have a thief applying for this job. Granted, it was nonviolent, but it was still a robbery. So they are now going to control that narrative, and that's all they're going to be thinking about the entire time that they're interviewing the rest of the way. You don't want them to do that. Nobody should control your narrative but you. So if you're getting to know one another and they're asking you questions and they're telling you about the job and you're asking questions about the job and you get to that point, the sweet spot is the middle of the interview. When they say to you, what would you like to tell me about yourself? Now you can work in that you have this past and what you've done to correct it and what you've done to grow and where you're at right now. They don't take control of your narrative because they know you as a person, a regular person up to that point. And then at the end, like I said, if you wait till the end, it's like you're hiding something. When you put your resume together, some people haven't worked in a long time because they've done years in prison or years in jail. So they haven't worked outside of a jail or outside of a prison. It's important to take those jobs that you've done while incarcerated and add those in to your jobs. Because let's say you've done 5, 10, 15, 20 years in prison and you haven't worked outside. How are you going to explain that gap to an employer if you have not had a job since you've been released? This may be the first job interview you're going on since your release. You take that job and you can split it up or you can put it all in. Let's say you worked in the kitchen at the prison. I was a cook. Put the name of the company that runs that part, because I know it's not usually the prison. It's usually a third-party company. You worked for this many years there, serving food for up to 2,000 people, right? You put that in your resume because it's a skill. It's a job. It shows that you've done something. If they say, I'm not familiar with this, most of them won't even ask you. But you can put that in there. And then you take those skills that you learned. I learned to prep cook. I learned how to create a menu for large groups of people. I was a sauté cook. Whatever you did, you can put that into your skill set. These are all things to remember as you're putting your resume together. I watch a video of this guy who did a lot of time in prison for murder, and he took his whole book that he presented to the Board of Parole when he was up for parole, of all the classes he took, all the certifications he got, everything he had done while he was in prison, and he had this big book, and that's what he presented to every single employer that he went to. Some turned him away, some didn't even want to talk to him. Some wanted to interview him just to get to know his story, but they were never planning on hiring him, and they would told him that right up front. Does that mean I want you to put together a 3-ring binder to bring to every employer? No. What I'm stating is, let's say you have a lot of certifications that you took while you were incarcerated or when you got out. You want to keep those in copies in like a little binder, just a thin notebook that you can 3-hole punch and put it in there, and you can present that to every employer. Here's every skill I've taken since my incarceration, every class, every certification, everything I've done is in this binder that I'm giving you. When you present that to an employer, that shows proof. It shows proof of rehabilitation. It shows proof of growth. That's what you want to do. If you're applying for a fast food place because you just need a quick job for now, would you present that whole book to them? No, probably not. But let's say you're going for a job in manufacturing or some type of a management job or some type of a computer software job or an IT job, something like that, then you may want to have that binder showing all the classes you took, all the certifications you have, everything you've done to rehabilitate and grow yourself. That you may want to give them. It's important. They can look through it. They can see, hey, this person's taken AI essentials. They've taken um, computer forensics. They've taken Linux. They've taken whatever, JavaScript. You want that in a binder to show. You don't want it just slapped on your resume. You want to show the work you put in. Put that in a binder. Hand that to employers. Make 10 copies of it if you have these important jobs that you're going for. Again, you don't need it if you're going into retail or one of those, jobs where a manager doesn't have time to look at that. They just want to know that you can do the job they want. But a bigger company may want to see that. It may impress them. Let's say that you have had to go before a parole board. Think about what you had to present to the parole board to prove that you were worthy of the chance to be paroled or put on probation. You're doing the same thing for a job. You want to prove to an employer that you are worth the chance, that you should get a shot at this job. And this is why. You prove to a parole board that you have growth and rehabbed and become the person you are today. Why wouldn't you want an employer to see that as well? So again, we'll do this one more time. Let me find it. I had to write some of these down. So again, you're not confessing your past. You're letting them know where your past is. And you're doing this in the middle of your interview. When they say, tell me about yourself, you want to be transparent. You want to be clear, concise, and to the point, right? I want to be transparent. About 5 years ago, I had a nonviolent conviction related to boom. I take full responsibility for that. Since then, I've completed a reentry program or voc rehab or college classes. I've stayed consistently employed and focused on structure and accountability. That experience really pushed me to grow. And today, I pride myself on being reliable and consistent. I'm excited about this opportunity because I know I can contribute and continue moving forward. That will shift an employer from "can we trust you" to "we see your value." It is your job to prove to an employer that you are valuable enough to be part of their team, that you are not who your past person was. You are this new person with this growth and accountability and reliability and excitement in starting something new and turning your life around. And it doesn't matter if you only worked at a place for a month before you interview for this new job, you let them know, "I have consistently shown up. I've been on time. I'm early. I stay late when they need me. I work extra shifts whenever they want me to." Whatever the case may be, it's important to emphasize that. It shows that another employer took a chance on you when maybe some other employers would not have. That's going to make the difference. If that employer trusted you, then maybe the one you're interviewing will as well. It's all on you to provide the proof that you have rehabilitated enough to be trusted and that you're worthy of being part of a team that can make a difference for an employer. It's not the employer's responsibility to give you a job or to just take you at face value. You have to prove to them that you're worth that face value. That falls on you. So again, we don't tell them in the beginning because we don't want them controlling our narrative. Once you tell them in the beginning, they take control of that narrative. They're not listening to any of your answers to any of their interview questions the rest of the time because in their head, they're playing over and over and over again that you have a criminal background. And that's all they focus on. We don't want to tell them at the end because then it seems like you're trying to hide it. It shows a lack of accountability by telling them that at the end. People can mistake it for a lack of integrity. You're trying to make an employer trust you. You want them to trust you. The sweet spot is the middle, as I said, right in the middle of the interview. That is where you want to present your past, not in detail. Because if you start getting into detail, what happens when we start talking about our past and we start to get into detail of our past, we actually start living in our past. And if we're living in our past, we cannot go forward. I hope this is helpful to you guys. If you know somebody else that could maybe benefit from those little tips and tools, please pass it along to them. Share the podcast, tell them to subscribe, and I hope everybody has a great 2 weeks, and we'll talk soon. Bye.